To get started, let's open up our cottage plan and elevation example drawing here. And we'll find a drawing here. It has a lot going on in it. It has several different elevations, a plan view, another floor plan, ceiling plan, roof, and some sections. So there's a lot going on in this file. Now, when you work in busy drawings, you may find it difficult to work in. Now, if your objects are organized by layer, as they should be, then you'll find using the isolate layer command to be very useful. For example, it's right here in our layer panel on the Home tab. If I select this command and I pick objects on certain layers, press Enter, it'll freeze all the other layers except for the ones I've picked. Now you can pick more than one object or layer at a time, and that's perfectly fine. But what that does is it isolates those objects on that layer. So you have a little bit of control over it, and that helps out quite a bit. Now, what if you want to work though with objects of different layers? Now you can do that. Pick the isolate layer command again, and I'm just going to do a crossing window and select a whole bunch of different things. Press Enter, and you can see I only made this one little window selection and didn't turn much off. I'll unisolate the layer and it came back. So sometimes it doesn't give you what you're looking for. What you can do instead is use the isolate objects command. Now, this command isolates selected objects regardless of layer or property. You just pick what you want to see and the rest is going to be turned off. It's pretty easy to do. So let's just select some objects, like this view right here. I'm going to pick everything in it. Once you've selected all of your objects, right-click and go to the isolate option. Now you have three different things here. One is to end the object isolation once you're done. But we can't do that yet because we haven't even isolated anything. But then we have isolate objects and we have hide objects. These will do the same sort of thing, just opposite. The isolate objects, which I'm going to left click on right now, will turn off all of the objects in your drawing except for the ones you picked. So it isolates them. So if I select these items again and right click, go to isolate, I can end object isolation and that'll turn everything back on. Now I can do just the opposite with the same command. I select these items, right click, go to isolate and say hide objects. So it'll hide just what I've selected. Now you can select something again and right click, or you can come down to your little status bar down here. And there is a button that you might have to turn on. So if you click on the customize button here, and if you need to, scroll up and down and find the isolate objects. Make sure this box is checked. See, when I check it and uncheck it, this box goes away. So this is the unisolate objects button. So you click on it and you can say end object isolation. It works the same both ways. So I can come down here and click on the button and I can say isolate objects or hide objects. So if I pick isolate objects, then I select what I want to work on, press enter, and it will do that. So there's two different ways to get to the same command. Also note, if you're working in a drawing and you see this box on and you see a little highlight, that means there is some object isolation going on in your file. So keep an eye on that. Look at it every once in a while, especially when you open up a brand new drawing or a drawing from someone else, because you may want to make sure that is turned on so you don't miss something. So the isolate objects is a great tool to use so you can just work very precisely with just a few things. And it's a very quick turn off and turn on, and you can hide certain things or you can isolate certain things, whichever way works for what you need at that moment. For this project, I want to look at the ice rink example file. So browse to your project files and let's open that up. This is just a sample drawing of a very generic ice hockey rink. Now, sometimes in AutoCAD, you need your objects to be a bit faded. That way you can show them a bit more softly or show objects that are behind them. That's where the transparency setting can help you out. Now, the transparency setting can be controlled by layer or by object. It works like setting an object's color or line type. So open up our layer manager, type in LA, and we see here something I'm going to want to make transparent, and that is the ice rink hatch. So this layer has the hatch pattern right here for our ice rink. See, it's ice rink hatch pattern. Now, I want to fade that back just a little bit so it's not as prevalent. And you can do that in one of two ways. The best way is to manage it through your layer manager. Now, this is the transparency setting. It starts at 0 and will go all the way up to 90. Now think of the numbers as the amount of transparency it has. So if its transparency is set at 0, that means there is 0 transparency. That means it's not transparent whatsoever. Now if it was 100, that means you wouldn't see it at all. They give us the settings in 10% increments. So we can set 10%, only a little bit of transparency. We go all the way down to 90%, which is a lot of transparency. A lot of times I find that the 50% or 40% works quite well. So I'm going to set it at 90%. Click OK. So you can see here, the hatch is still on. I can barely see it at all. So let's go back and let's change this to a 50% transparency. Click OK. And you can see it's come back. Now you really get to see this type of benefit from the transparency setting when you have a lot of different lines behind it, whatever that color may be. So if we change this color to something a little bit more prevalent, like red, if I change this one also to red, I'm going to override the transparency on this hatch pattern because I can do that per object, though I recommend you don't. I can change it right here, and I'm going to set it to 0 to have no transparency. This red object and this red object are very different. This is much brighter. So when we go to print, the red is going to be a solid color, and this is going to be faded back. So I'm going to do a little plot here. I'm going to show you a print preview of what it's going to look like. When you go to print, you have to make sure you have the plot transparency setting on. Otherwise, it won't apply any transparency whatsoever. So that's something you need to be mindful of. You can turn this on all the time. That way you'll always have transparency in case someone has set that in your file. So if I look at the preview, you can see this line work is faded back quite a bit. So there's a big difference. So the transparency setting works great if you have a lot of different hatches you have to do, but they're very solid and it covers up a lot of their line work. You may want to fade that back a little bit. I suggest you start off by looking between 40, 50, and 60% of your fading for your transparency. And go from there and see what works best in that specific situation. But it's a great way to have an area shaded as a background to highlight it, but then perhaps you can have the line work still come through. So keep that in mind as a way to hatch or to better visualize your line work. For this video, I want to take a look at our movie house example file. Go to the project files for this chapter and open up the file called movie-house.dwg. It's a simple movie house with some lines in it, walls, windows, and some other things. Before paper space came into AutoCAD, we had to draw in what's called model space, and that's the space I'm in right now. If I come here to this dimensions tab, this is paper space. This is where your drawing border goes. And here you'll create a viewport that looks at your model. Now, if the scale of your drawing changed back in the day, then you had to change what's called the LT scale. That stands for Linetype scale. Now, by default, it comes set at 1. And that's the setting you really just need to leave it to all the time. This scaled your line types so that dashes and dots, things like that, would show up as dashed lines and dots accordingly. Otherwise, the dashes would be so small that they would look like solid lines, and that was a problem. However, though, now these days, AutoCAD works with viewports, and the viewports will automatically scale the line type of your drawing accordingly. So if I have this viewport here, and I look in, I see these dashed lines. As I zoom into them, they become larger. That is until I set an exact scale here. Sometimes they get really big. If I refresh my screen, they'll reset. And they'll set so that these dashes are at the proper length for when you print them out. So your dashes, regardless of the scale of your drawing, will come out and be the same length. So I could have a viewport or view that's a 1 to 40 scale and another one that's a 1 to 200 scale. Two very different scales, but the dashes will come up to be the same length and size. So that's good. That's what you want. So in order to do that, you do nothing anymore. Just leave it alone. However, there are times when, well, you just can't get the dashes to come out right. So what do you do then? Well, then you'll have to change the line type scale of a particular drawing. If we go to model space, you can see the dashed lines here kind of disappeared. You can't really see them. So I can change the LT scale inside my drawing here to, let's say, 20. Now I can see some dashed lines. However, that's going to affect the way they look when I go to my viewport. So typically you're going to leave that alone. What you will do is change your viewport scale right here, your annotation scale, to match whatever scale that your viewport is going to be at. That way you can see your dashed lines the way they need to be in model space while you're working. However, you can change the LT scale of an object. Let's say it just needs to look a little bit different. So when you select the object, you have the LT or the line type scale setting for that object in your properties palette. So here I can change this to 2. And the larger the number, the larger the dashes are going to be. So if I offset this object to right there, and I set this LT scale back to 1 where it should be, you'll notice the difference. I didn't change these lines too much. They're on the same layer and they're representing the same sort of thing, but they look different. That's okay. You can change that to override that 1, but bear in mind, if you change your LT scale somewhat, it's going to affect everything. So you can keep trying to change settings. You can change it to different styles, different types, and it's going to affect it. So you can see here, I went through a lot of different LT scales and it changed it dramatically. And sometimes it just made them so big you couldn't even see the spaces anymore. So keep that in mind. Or if you're working with different scales and you can't get the line types to look just right, check the LT scale. Change your line type scale settings per objects to 1. That way it'll work together. Everything will be scaled accordingly to the scale and to the way the line types themselves have been designed to work. For this project here, I want to open up the ice rink example file. Objects in AutoCAD are displayed according to their draw order. The draw order determines which overlapping object is seen or not seen. So imagine that each object in AutoCAD has a level, like the floor levels in a skyscraper. The bottom level or the ground floor of that skyscraper will not be seen if there is an object above it or on a higher level. So if you're up above in the air, flying high above the skyscraper, what you see is the roof or the very top of that skyscraper. There's a lot of other things below it. But if you were to remove that top ceiling, that roof, you could see the next floor. If you remove that one, you could see the floor below it, and etc. Well, AutoCAD kind of works the same way. In this ice rink example file, you're going to see a solid filled hatch pattern. That's right here. That's the ice rink. The draw order here places it below the ice rink line work. These circles and all these other lines, this arc, etc. It's been set up that way so that you can see the lines in the rink here. If the hatch had a higher draw order, then you wouldn't see the lines. It's difficult to manage draw order in your objects a lot of times. Now, the best way to do it is just to make sure you can see what you want to see, and if not, change the object or object's draw order. So, for example, if I select an object, like this hatch, and then I right-click, I can get to draw order. Now, you have 4 options: bring to front, send to back, and these are the 2 you're probably going to use the most, or bring above objects or send under objects. So bring to front, we'll just bring it all the way up to the front or up to the top. So when I unselect it here, you can see it's gone. The other line work looks like it's gone. I can do a regen all and it doesn't go away, but the stuff is still there. If I do a selection window, you can see it's picking it up. The line work is there. You just can't see it. Now when it prints, this is what it's going to look like. So you have to be careful with your draw order. So in order to move something all the way to the back, you select it, right-click, and go to draw order and say send to back, and it'll put it to the back. Now, if that's already in the back and you have one object that you want to bring, find it, select it, right-click, draw order, and bring to front. So you can bring that one object back. Now you can also get 2 different objects and send one to the front or one to the back of just that object. So I can reach in here, select this other one, that's that other circle, and I've picked up these 2 items here, which I want to unselect. If I right-click, draw order, and I say bring above objects. So now I say, what object do I want it to be higher than? I'm going to say this hatch pattern. So I pick it, press enter, and it brings it up. Most of the time, though, you're going to want to send things all the way to the back and then all the way to the front, just because it's easier. I very rarely move objects, draw order according to another object. Now, there are a couple of tools in AutoCAD that will help you manage this. One is called text to front. And what that does is that it will bring all text, dimensions, leaders. You can pick either one of those items or all of them, and will bring them all to the front. And that's typically what you're going to want to do. Now, another similar command is called hatch to back. You just type that in, hatch to back, press enter, and it moves all hatch patterns in your file to the back. Hatch to back, text to front are two commands you're going to want to run often, just to make sure, because a lot of times the hatch just somehow moves up to the front and it's blocking out everything so you can't see it. So if something's printing out weird, it's being covered up, it doesn't quite show up in the exact way you want it to, check the draw order. Check the hatches and the text, use hatch to back and text to front, and that'll probably fix your problem. In this video, we're going to take a look at using text and some of the advanced tools that are available to us in AutoCAD. So let's open up the notesexample.dwg file. That's notesexample.dwg. This is just a file that has one object of mtext in it, or multi-line text. There are more than just lines and arcs in your construction documents. Our drawings, regardless of their intent, need written instructions. So text in AutoCAD has come a long way since I first started using it. When I first started, all that you could do was type a single line of text. That was fine for most of it, but when you hit enter, it was a new text object that was started. That was fine most of the time, but if you had a long series of notes or notes you needed to edit, it was a big pain to work with. Once mtext or multi-line text was available, notes were a lot more fun to work with. But now, the mtext feature in AutoCAD is almost as powerful as an entire word processor. In fact, if you've used a word processor, working with multi-line text in AutoCAD will be very familiar to you. So again, if you haven't already, open up the notesexample.dwg file. In here, we have a single mtext object. And what I want to do with this is number the items. So we have like a note 1, note 2, note 3. Now, before, what you had to do was just type in a 1, tab over, and align all the text. But if you double click on your text object, that will open up the text editor. And this is what it looks like. You have a ruler here, you have your working window, and you have this contextual ribbon called the text editor. You can change your different text styles. You use different fonts if you want. You can mask the text. You can change the text height. You can match properties from one text object to another, bold, italicize, underline. Here's your fonts, your layers, and other formatting options right here. Now, this are your paragraph options. This is where you can change your justification. Click on it here, click on any of these, change your line spacing, or you can come up here to your bullets and numbering. Now, once you have a bunch of text written in here, you can select it all and click on the bullets and numbering. Right now, mine's turned off, but if I select numbered, you can see the preview here. It automatically numbers my objects. So if I go to the bottom here of note number 10, press enter, it automatically populates my list number with the next number, in this case 11. Press enter again, it goes to 12. If I press enter again, it goes away. I can just start typing in more notes. It's very easy to use. Now you'll also notice in here that some of these items have red dashes underneath them. Now, these are words that the AutoCAD dictionary doesn't understand, meaning it's a spell check. So it's saying, hey, these things aren't here. What do you want me to do? Well, in this case here, we have a Deltec. Well, that's a name brand for some different parts of walls. So what I want to do is click here, get my cursor there. And if I right click, you can see here, it's giving me suggestions for possible proper spellings. And if I can't find one here, I can go to more suggestions and it will show me that there. Well, this is a proper name or a brand name, so it's not in the dictionary. But if I want, I click add it to dictionary and the line goes away. Plus, in future instances of AutoCAD, anytime we see this name Deltec, it'll automatically say, yes, it's spelled correctly. And I can do that again for knee wall and all these others if I'd like. Now, if I come down here, I see this word. This is important. Well, it is because it's spelled incorrectly. If I right click, here's a proper spelling, and it'll fix that for me. And when you're finished working with multi-line text object, just click outside of that window, and there's your object. Now, there are other really cool items that you can use. One is a find and replace. Type in the word find, press enter. Just type in what is it that you want to find. Let's say Deltec, and I want to replace it with some other brand name. I'm going to call it brand B. So if I pick replace all, I found one match of it in my drawing and it changed it. Click OK, Click Done. And you'll see up here where I misspelled brand B, it's what it put in there for me. So that was real nice. Find and replace. That's a real nice tool that you can use. Now you also have a find and replace tool in your ribbon when you open up the text editor. You'll find it right here. Click on it and it will find it right inside here in your text object. And you have a bit of criteria. You tell it to find what, tell it to replace it with what, and you can have these different filters. And that can be very useful as well. So if you are in the editor, you can get to some special editor settings by double-clicking inside your text object and then right-clicking, and that will bring up your menu. Go down to where it says Editor Settings, and you can find check spelling right here. You can turn that off and on if you don't want to see it. You can also go to your check spelling settings. Click that here, and you can ignore capitalized words, ignore words with mixed cases, or however you want to do it. Just click Cancel, and that will change your settings for your spell check. Now, you can also work with columns inside of your multi-line text. Once in the editor, you come up here to the top. You can say no columns, or you can switch it to dynamic columns. You can switch it to a manual height or an auto height. Typically, I'm using a manual height setting because I don't ever really know what it needs to look like. So when I left click and drag on the edge of my text editor, I can change my columns just by clicking and dragging. And AutoCAD will automatically wrap the text wherever I need it to go. I can define the width of my column just by dragging left or right, and I define the height by dragging up and down. Left click out of there, and you can see this is what it looks like. Again, I can click and drag almost everywhere. I can click here, and that'll keep them separated a little bit, which makes it easier to see, which is probably a really good idea. Or if I go to the columns, I can click Static Columns. I can make it where there are always 2 or 3, and as I stretch, it's going to keep them that way. I can also go to Dynamic Columns and switch it to an automatic height so that as we type in our text, it keeps it there at that same text, wherever it needs to be. And I can control that and tell it what I want it to be. So that's useful. If you only have a set area in your file and you know how big it's going to be, you can enter that in. Typically, I don't do that because it's going to be different on every drawing. So when you single select your text, you can also grip edit it this way. Control the width, control the separation right here, just like you would on your text. So you can see you can get to some crazy looking things, ones that you're probably not really going to want to use in that case. But it's very easy to use, it's very quick, and you can make it into a very powerful tool when you're working with multi-line text. Writing notes in AutoCAD can be a daunting task. If you have a standard set of notes that you use on most of your projects, then it's good practice to type those up once and only one time. Remember that the point of AutoCAD is to do less work so that we can be more efficient. Now, there are several ways to reuse previously written notes. One is to go to an old project and copy the text from there. You can also set up a block that has notes in it and insert it into your drawing. There are a few issues with these two processes. If you copy text from another job, you could have project-specific text in it, and you may not want that to copy over. Also, this method, as well as the block of standard notes, could have text styles and formatting issues. Most of the time, that's probably going to be okay, and you can quickly change those formats however you need to for your project. But whatever text style and layers were used for that text, you're going to bring that into your new drawing as well, even a text style. So if you make a standard block to use them, in theory, that really shouldn't be an issue though. But there is a third method of text that you can use, and that is to import your text from a .txt file. Now, this gives you a few things the others don't. One is that there is no formatting involved that you have to deal with. There's no styles, no layers, nothing, just the raw text that you need. It also allows a non-CAD user to be able to type up the notes for you like an assistant. Let's just open up a blank CAD file. Any file is fine, any template, doesn't matter. Or if you're in one already, just go right ahead and use that. And that's what I've done here. I just have a blank file. Now, let's start the mtext command. Just type in mtext, press enter. Pick somewhere on your screen, and let's create our window. So this is the text editor. Now what you want to do is right click, and then go to import text. Then browse to your file where you have it at. So I want you to go and find our notes.txt file. So go to your project folder that has your project files in it. And let's look at the notes.txt file. This is it right here. Select it and click open. And I'm done. It's that easy. So you can left click on here, and here are my notes. I can select this. I can use my grip edits for my columns. I can set that however I need to. You can see there might be a little bit of formatting issues in here. You can go in and fix that. That's just inherent to the exact text that we have. That's not a problem. Once you fix that though, then your problem's solved and you can just work with it. This option gives you a clean set of notes to work with, so that now all I have is the text, the raw text. I can do whatever I want to with it, whatever I need to with it, and I don't have to worry about styling issues, text styles, layers, blocks, fonts, anything like that. I'm only using those styles that are already in my current drawing. I'm very excited about this next section. This one is about fields. I love fields. With fields, if you link it, the text is going to come to you. So I use fields and tables in AutoCAD to get specific data from my objects and then to do calculations for me. Now, we'll talk about the calculations part in another chapter, but yes, AutoCAD can be automated to make calculations for you, and you use fields to do that. So a field is a link in your text object, which could be a dimension, a table, multi-leader, or text, and it will display information about another object, system setting, or some sort of variable. They're used frequently with sheet sets and title blocks, but they can also be used anywhere else that there's text, except in a tolerance in the dimension settings. So open up the Movie House example file. Now, say we need to know and to note the square footage of the footing for this building. That's this guy right here. Now, we can easily select the polygon, read what the property manager tells us about the area, and type that into our notes. What if, though, we make a change and it's now bigger or smaller? I don't want to type it in either. So let's let AutoCAD do the work. Start an in-text object. Just put the note right here. And you want to insert a field. Now you can do that in one of a couple of ways. You can come right up here and click on the field button. You can right click and go to the insert field option right here. Or my preferred method is to just press Control F. This will bring up your field dialog box. Now you can see there's a lot of different types of things here where you can gather information from. And there are several different categories. I rarely use the all because there's just too many of them. You can go to date and time, and it will create the date and the time, the plot date, a lot of different things. You can set it up for different formatting, and it will display this bit of information all the time. That's one thing. Another thing you can do here is the document. I use this one a lot for file names. If I want to display what the file name is, I can do that here as well. I can also find subjects, titles, things like that that are tied to the file itself. Now the link, I can display a hyperlink here, or objects, which is one that I use very often. And if I click on the object, and this is the one we want right now, click on the object. This is to get information from an object inside your file, something you've drawn. So I select the object category, and I come up here to this little target button. I click it, and I find the object I want. In this case, it's this polygon. I select it, and then here are all the different options of information that I can display. I want to display the area. So here's the area. Well, this isn't exactly how I want it to look. It's kind of difficult to see. I'm going to put it in architectural, and when I do that, it shows me a lot of different things. It's in square foot. If I go to engineering, fractional, current units, decimal, whatever it is I want to show. Well, I don't like all these zeros on here, and I just want it rounded up. So I'm just going to round there, no zeros, and I want to put in some additional formatting. So if I want to convert this to something, I can. Right now it's in square inches, so I want to convert that to square feet. So I'll go divide it by 12. And here's a preview of what it's going to look like. I can add a prefix or a suffix. I can say square feet. And you see here, you're going to need to put a space there, otherwise it's going to put it right up against your number. And I want to have number separators. I want to use a comma, and it's going to go right here because that's the way we do this where I'm at. We use commas for those numbers. But there are other options. You can do a period or just a single quote. Whichever formatting that you want to use, you can. You can also put on zero suppression for leading or trailing. That way you don't have to mess with your precision settings if you don't want to. Click OK and click OK again. Here's my text, and there we go. It looks kind of small, So I'm going to need to scale this thing up just a little bit so we can see it, but that's fine. Still needs to be a little bigger. And here we go. That's almost big enough for what I want to do. I'm going to change the color. That white's kind of hard to see. And I'm going to make it bigger yet. There. So I'm doing this to make it easy. Now you'll notice there is a gray background around the text. Well, that's to tell you that it's a field. The gray background won't print. Trust me on this. It won't print. But this is just to let the user know that that is a field. Now, one of the really cool features about having this as a field is that it's reading the real-time area of this object. Now, if I change the shape of this object, the area is going to change. And once I refresh my screen, that number automatically updates. That's one of the best features of fields and why I love using them so much. It will give you lots of different types of information. And you can put them in just about anything you want. And you can use more than one field per object as well. So if I insert another field, you can see that's the object. You can also get plot information. You can go to other. This is where you'll get system variables. So you can find the current state of some sort of system variable in a CAD file. Or you can go to sheet sets. We'll talk about sheet sets later on, but sheet sets really use and are built around using fields for a lot of their information. But most of the time, I'm using the objects and the document and the sheet set options. Now, let's open up another file. Let's look at the title block.dwg file. So if you go to the 24 by 18 paper space tab, if you're not there already, you'll see a little title block that I have here. Now this title block is a block. It's set up for a C-size sheet, or in this case, it's 24 by 18 inches. Now the title block here is an attributed block, meaning that it has text placeholders where I can go and fill them out. Now if you select and double click on the block, that'll bring up the attribute editor, and I can type in all the information I want. I can also type in a field. So if I see here I have number of sheets, sheet date, sheet number, drawn by, things like that, client name, sheet title, I can do a lot of different things here. So if I go here to sheet title, you can see this has a little placeholder. That's for a field. Now this is set up to work with sheet sets. But if I double click on it, and I go to document, and I go to file name, it'll display the file name. I can display the path and the file name or just the name itself. And this is the little preview of what it looks like. I can turn off or on the file extension if I want to. Click OK. And here it is displayed right up here. So if I rename this file, that'll automatically update. It'll tell me what file it is. And that's just another use of fields. AutoCAD tables work very similarly to a spreadsheet. So if you've used something like Microsoft Excel, you'll be very familiar with how to use tables. So they'll actually probably be a piece of cake for you because they work very similarly. Now, they're not as powerful, obviously, but they are still full of many features. Plus, you can work with your data inside of AutoCAD in a table format. Now let's open up the tables.dwg file. In this file, I have a table already set up. It has a little bit of formatting done to it, and I want to show you some tricks that you can use. Plus, we have 3 different shapes that we're going to use tables with to determine their total area. So in this table, you can see it's already formatted just slightly. It has some red coloring on some of the text. Some of the other text is white. But this is just a table from a surveyor's notebook, and it has point numbers, descriptions, northing and eastings, rod height, information, elevations, things like that. So if you've ever done any type of surveying work, this might look familiar to you. So when you select a table, and then you go to edit row, or a column, or a cell, whatever it is, it will open up a table cell contextual ribbon tab for you. And here you'll have access to most of your formatting. You'll also be able to edit the formatting for your cell, column, or row here in the Properties palette. So when you select any of those 3 options, you can lock your cells. You can lock them for content, meaning these numbers can't be changed until you unlock them. Or you can format lock them, meaning once you set up your visual display, then you can lock that in so it won't be accidentally changed. Or you can lock both of them or none at all. To change some of your settings, you can just pick a row or a column. So in this case, I'm going to pick a column. You can get to your alignments here, so you can switch everything top left, middle right, or however you want them. You can do the same thing for a column or for an individual cell. You can also change some of the formatting. So if you select the entire thing here, you can change some of the formatting just through your Properties tab. You can change some of your cell width and height. You can change the overall color of something. You can change spacing, break height, things like that. Now, if you select this little corner here, this little gray box, that'll give you even more formatting options. So you can set up cell width and height again here. You can also set up a background color. Right now I have it set to none, but you can pick most any color that is available to AutoCAD. You can do the same thing with your borders. When you select the borders, this will give you control of them similarly to how you do it in Excel. So you set up your parameters. So we want a double line. We want the color to be green. And then you just start picking. And this will give you a preview of what it's going to look like. There, I just changed all of that. And you don't have to make everything the same. You can pick just a column and change your borders. You can put it in a single row, make it green, or we can even make it a cyan color. And you can do that too. You can also change just the text. You can also select just specific cells. So if you pick one cell and then hold down the Shift key and left click again, it'll get everything in between. If you press down the Control key, it doesn't add them up. So keep that in mind. So if I go and change the text, I can scroll down here, change it from red to yellow. Now, sometimes you'll find that something just doesn't quite change. For example, if I click here in this box and it says it's red, but it's clearly white. If I try to change it to yellow, it still doesn't change. Well, that must mean that there's some sort of formatting inside the cell itself. So when you double click in the cell, you can edit the text in it. You might need to select it, and you can see there's an override that's been added to it right here. So you can go to by layer, or you can right click and go to the remove formatting option. And once you've done that, exit the table, and you can see it's gone to the setting where I've put it. So you may run across that from time to time. Now, if you create a table, it's very simple. Just type in the word table. You can give it all this different type of information that you want. You can set the number of columns and rows and width to it right there. Click OK. And there we go. And you can start entering it. Now, if you want to add a row, just select the row, right click, and say insert row above or below. And in this case, it really won't matter. I'm going to insert one more. So let's find some areas. I'm going to call this one area. And I'm going to get inside this text, right click and say insert field. I'm going to go to object, pick object again, and click on the little target. I'm going to select this shape here. And I want the area. Here's my preview. That's just in units. Click OK. So this tab right here now has the area for this shape. I'm going to do the same thing for these others. Just go through the same settings again until we get all of the shapes in here. Now that I have some data inside my table, I can use formulas. So if I click on a cell here and I go up to my formula options right here, you can see what I can add here: sum, average, count, cell, or equation. Or if I left click inside the cell, right click, go to insert, I can insert a block inside a table. So you can create a legend with symbols, a field, which I've done over here, or a formula. And I have the same options right here. So if I pick sum, it asks me to select the first corner of the table cell range. So I'm going to pick inside here, and then for the second. So I'm just creating a selection rectangle, and it will sum up all of these together. And there's my sum. If I look at the math, it looks about right. So you can do that. That's how you do your formulas, just the same way you would in regular spreadsheet, but you are limited a bit to what you can do. So again, you single click, then right click, go to insert, formulas, average in this case, and I'm going to make my selection window, press enter, and there's my average. So you can format this bit of information just like you would anything else, just like regular text and things like that. Now, if you have a spreadsheet that someone else has created for you, or perhaps you've created it, that's fine. You can insert that spreadsheet in a couple of different ways. Now, if you open it up in Excel, which I've done here, and this is that same data that we saw earlier, one of the easiest ways to get it into AutoCAD is to select all of the cells that you want, right-click, and copy. Collapse that, go back into AutoCAD, go to your Home tab, go to your Clipboard panel, go to Paste, and then click Paste Special. Now you can just paste the data the way it is right now. If I do, this is what I get. I get all the information in this image looking thing. I can't really do anything with it. I can make it a little bit bigger, make it a little bit smaller, and that's about it. But that's fine, and that's a one-time deal. It's already formatted. It's just a couple of clicks, and it's there. Another option, again, go to Paste Special. I can select here under the paste as an AutoCAD entity. Click OK, insert it, and it inserts it as an AutoCAD table. Then you can go and format it however you want. But the nice thing about it is that it's an AutoCAD table, and I can come in here and I can edit this however I'd like. I can delete a column if I want to. I can delete a row if I'd like, and I can control the way it looks in here. Now there's one more option I want to show you. Again, you go to your clipboard, go to Paste Special, and Paste Link. Now again, I have my two options to paste it so it looks like this Microsoft Excel worksheet or as an AutoCAD entity. I'm going to select AutoCAD entity, click OK, and click here and it inserts it. Now, when I select this, it is now linked to my spreadsheet. When I change the spreadsheet and save the spreadsheet, this file will be updated inside AutoCAD. So if you have a data table that you need for a report, you can type it up in Excel, put that in your report, and link it to your AutoCAD drawing so that the two will always be in sync. Annotation scaling is a great feature that will have AutoCAD automatically scale your model space text to a certain predefined size or a paper height, no matter what the scale of your viewport or drawing is. Let's open up our annotation.dwg file and we'll take a look and see how this works. Now, without this setting, any text that we put in model space will always be that same size. So it'll scale up and down with the line work, as line work should. When we change a scale from maybe say 1 to 40 scale to a 1 to 100 scale, the text will keep getting smaller the greater the scale is, or it'll keep getting bigger the more you zoom in. Well, you don't really need that or want that even. You want your text to be a certain height. Usually it's about 1/8 of an inch. So let's draw some text. I'm going to draw an M text, and I'm just going to put it right here in this room. I'm going to type in something simple. This is a room. And you can see here it's really, really tiny. If I select it, right now I see that it's at 1/8 inch in height. Now that's the height you want it to look on paper, but obviously according to this, you can't even see it. So if I go to one of my text sizes here, this scale is 1/8 inch equals a foot inside this viewport. 1/8 inch equals a foot. We can't even see the text in there. It's just way too tiny. So if I select the text, let's make it bigger. I'm going to make it a full inch in height, but let's make it 8 inches. This is a room. So now we can see it. So if we come here, we can definitely see it in our view. Okay, that's a lot better. But what happens if we change the view or the scale of this viewport? So I'm going to unlock the viewport and I'm going to change the scale to 1/4 inch equals a foot. So we zoom in and the text keeps getting bigger. The more we zoom in, the bigger the text gets. And that's not what we need. We want it to stay the same height, just like our dimensions are here, that just happen to be in paper space. So typically you're not going to want to do that, but that's the way this drawing's set up. So if we go back to model space and we type in the word style, S-T-Y-L-E, or just S-T, this is where you control the styles for your text. We see here we have an annotative text style, but I'm just going to switch with notes since it's current. We can make it annotative. We click this box here to do that, and we set the paper text height right here. So regardless of what scale the drawing is, it will always display in paper space as 1/8 of an inch. Click Apply, select Current, click Close. So now let's make sure this text here is set to our notes style. And since we first set it up, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to copy it, put it down here, select the text, and I'm going to make it annotative right here. Select Yes. And one thing you have to do with annotative text is make sure you have the scales added to it. That way it'll know to display it at that size. So I'm going to add 1/8 of an inch scale. Click OK. Now, when we come here, we can't see the text. That's because this isn't at 1/8 of an inch scale. So if I select inside the viewport, I activate it, and I come down here to my scale settings, and I select 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to get this. Well, I've gotten this great big giant text here because this is still set at a paper text height of 8 inches. I don't want it to be 8 inches. I want it to be 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to make that adjustment. And here it is. So now I have this text, and it's right here at 1/8 of an inch. So when I set my view to 1/8 of an inch to a foot, it becomes the right size. Now, if I add to this by selecting the text, going to my properties palette, and clicking on the annotative scale, I click this box and I click add. Now let's say I want it to be 1/4 inch of a foot. I can do that. Click OK. Unselect the text, go to my viewport, and when I change the scale of my viewport to 1/4 of an inch, you notice the text zoomed down to its size. This one keeps staying the same. This one keeps going to the appropriate size. That's what annotative text will do. Now you can make your text annotative, your multi-leaders, hatch patterns, and even dimensions. That way they'll always be in the right place and they'll always scale up and down regardless of what scale you'll use. For our chapter project, we're going to use a drawing that we've become familiar with, our ice rink drawing. We're going to create some annotative styled dimensions, and we're going to change the viewport so we can see that come up and down. We're also going to work with some tables and get some information that way. So let's open up our chapter project annotation. Now when I'm done, I'm going to save the file, and you're going to have it here so that you can look at your file and my file and kind of compare the two. That way it'll help you see if you're having any type of issues or anything. So here we are in model space, and let's make sure we have a dimension style that we can use. We'll start with standard and we'll make one new. Let's just call it style 1. And we want it to be annotative. So we click that box there and click continue. Now let's just change a few things here. On the lines, let's shorten up these extensions here, and we'll make sure it's annotative. Here it is, and click OK. Now I'll set this one current, and you can see and tell that it's annotative because it has this icon here that is an annotative icon. These two styles aren't annotative, but this one is, and this is ours as well. Click close, and we're going to create some dimensions. Now you might get this pop up. It says you're creating an annotative object, and you need to set the annotation scale to the scale at which the annotation is intended to display. So let's go 1/8 of an inch for right now. Click OK. And I want to just add a few dimensions here. Turn on my O snaps. I'm going to dimension this line and this line here. Nice and simple. And let's go to our layout. Well, I see in my layout here that I'm not at the right scale. So I need to do a couple of different things. I need to select these two dimension styles and make sure I add the proper annotative scale to that. And if we're not sure what it is, we can always go back, activate the viewport, look at the current scale. It's a 1:30. So I select these two objects again, go to my annotative scale, click add, find the 1:30, select it, click OK, and I'm going to change this to 1:30 so that I can get a better idea of what it's going to look like. And if I want to change anything on it, I can right here real quickly. Go to my layout tab, and you can see my dimensions are right here. So I can make some changes to this, all that I want. Not the best looking dimensions, but you kind of get the idea. Now let's say I need a little table. Create a table. I'm going to insert it right in here. And it's a little too big. So I can use the scale command to scale it up and down, or I can just change it however I want to. Now what I want to do is get a couple of areas. I'm just going to keep it simple, get 2 different areas here and get a total. So I'm just going to need circle 1, press enter, circle 2. Now I'm going to need to add a row below it, and I can delete the rest of these columns. This doesn't need to be as wide as it is. I want to shrink that down, and I can shrink this down a bit as well. Now in here I want to have a sum, so I'm going to go to my formulas, go to sum, and it's going to add these 2 cells up. Now there's nothing in here right now, so it's going to give me these pound signs. That just means something's not right. But once I enter information in here, it'll start to add up. So I'm going to select in here, I'm going to right click, insert field. I'm going to go to an object. I'm going to come down here and select that circle. It's going to give me the area. Click OK. And I'm going to do the same here. Right click, insert field. I'm already on object type. Select my target and click that one there. Click OK. Now when I do a refresh, I get my sum for those two areas. So there is a lot that you can do with different annotations, different styles, tables, annotation styles, fields, and information like that. You can gather data from your drawing and put it in a format that is presentable at any scale.